Tell me how someone watching this, perhaps they're in high school, perhaps they're in university or recently graduated and newly in their career, what does courage as a Christian look like without being cavalier and reckless?
Well, it's a good question. There's a lot of Christians who don't walk the line well on courage, and there's some that do. I think the tendency, the temptation is always to not be dogmatic or not be clear about what we believe, or not to declare who we are in our work or in public.
And you're saying that's a bad thing?
I think that is a bad thing. Let's take the same-sex marriage debate, because it's one of the main ones. When that comes up, one of the things that goes on, and this is me as well, as much as anyone, is people think of their gay friend when the same-sex marriage debate comes along. And they go, Bob or whoever, that person is in their brain, whether they, admit it or not. And even for me, there's people I know who are gay, and they are in my mind, even when I do this show. Yeah. And so there's a very powerful influence that has. As Christians, we're commanded to be light. The light's got to be on. Everyone should think of a Christian that they know. Everyone should, when these issues come up, when relevant things arise, they should know. They should be like, oh, that's, John and Sally, Christians. Yeah. But they don't. Yeah. Because Christians' lights aren't on, if I could put it that way.
Yeah. So what you're saying is that when a homosexual hears that Christians hate them, they think of their Christian friends.
Absolutely.
And they recall the actual experience. The truth is that despite any ideological disagreements, the reality is that there's love and unconditional friendship.
Yes.
And acceptance of them as valuable, valid, dignity-deserving individuals, even though we disagree on some ideas.
Absolutely, and I've seen this even in a professional context. Like, I used to work with Lyle Shelton of ACL, and he'll be very embarrassed if he sees this, but he is one of the most genuine, nice men you will know close up. And
I get that.
He doesn't have a nasty attitude towards anybody, say, in the LGBT community. And I've noticed professionally that when he gets to know some people on the other side of the debate, there's a certain respect that suddenly generates. If Christians were out and proud and, they were active in their community. Well, I'm serious, in the same way.
We should have a pride parade.
We should, well, maybe. At Christmas, that could be the pride parade. But, really, if we were proud and if we were strong and people thought of us, I think it would be a very healthy thing. And we don't do it because, whilst we are at the same, there's two things always go on. For Christians. When they are clear about their convictions or who they are, two things happen. And this is in the Sermon on the Mount. The first one is persecution. There's people who don't like you for it. And that's not just me being a victim. It's a fact. We all know it's a fact. Yeah. But the other thing that
it's an absolute fact that the most persecuted people group in the world are Christians.
Christians, that's absolutely true, yeah.
It's less visible in the blood and property style of persecution that goes on prolifically in developing countries, but it's still a fact.
Certainly the Middle East has a lot to do with that, yeah. But
even Indonesia.
Oh, yeah.
We see a politician being hounded because he's a Christian, because he holds Christian ideologies.
Or Asia Bibi in Pakistan, who's imprisoned on death row for blasphemy. And there's a lot of doubt about whether that ever even happened. But see, that's the one thing that happens, and we freak out and we run away and we shut down and we hide. But the promise is that something else happens, and that is when the salt is there on the ground or when the light is there on the hill, good things happen. People glorify God. People see who we really are and what we really believe, and they hopefully see a witness to God and a witness to Christ in us. And that's the other promise. And that's true as well. And I've seen professional examples of both of those things. And unfortunately, they go together. It goes with the turf. And you can think of as Christians, and I'm thinking now as a Gen Y person, as you alluded to before, I think, well, who are my Gen Y, my young person heroes in the Bible? Well, you've got Joseph at the age of 17. You've got Daniel at the age of probably 15-ish, where these guys are taken into places where essentially it seems like their life is over. You know, Joseph's never going to see his family again. Everyone thinks he's dead. Yeah. He's a slave. He'll probably end up dead. He's finished his life. He's done his ruination. I mean, the guy must have been in a dreadful position. And a beautiful woman chases after him, and he says, no, he says, I won't do this. I won't do this great sin against my God. He says, I will honour God first. And Daniel, the same thing. He says, you know what, I'm going to honour God first, and I'm going to tell the king, who is crazy and could just kill me because he doesn't like the shape of my head or something. You know, I'm just going to sit back and I'm going to say, no, this is who I am. I'm a Christian, and this is my conviction because I want to honour God. In both cases, I mean, God had their back. Those guys were incredibly blessed for taking that stand. Yeah. And there's many modern examples of people, many great Christian leaders who have been around for the last, over the course of the last few hundred years, who have been tested, have honoured God, and that's what's followed. And there's fruit and there's persecution. And I think the church needs to get much more comfortable with the fact that both of those things go hand in hand, and comfortable with the fact that courage is contagious. If everybody goes quiet and turns the light off, then nobody has the courage to do anything, and it becomes a self-fulfilling issue. You know, we shrink back into a corner, I know situations legally where challenges have come against Christians who have been doing Christian things, and we've said to them, "You've got to take a stand now," and they said, "No, we'll just placate, and this will go away," and it doesn't go away. It's like salami. One slice of the salami is followed by another slice, and the advance continues. And they'll step back and, these people are still coming for us. And until eventually, this was a Christian organisation, it doesn't exist anymore.
So let's say somebody is in a government organisation.
Yes.
And they're with one of their colleagues just conducting their normal duties. And the conversation happens that this colleague complains about the erosion of freedoms and starts a political conversation talking about how, personal freedom is being diminished politically at the moment. And the Christian responds, yes. For example, the homosexual marriage agenda is shutting down debate and impacting on our freedoms. And if we just disagree with it, and I do disagree with it, then we're vilified and our rights are diminished. If that conversation then gets back to management, and management sees fit to require the Christian to apologise for offending the person who, unbeknownst to the Christian, had a homosexual relative or friend, how do you think the person should courageously, but not cavalierly, respond?
And just to say, firstly, that's not a far-fetched example. I mean, I've been aware of very similar sorts of circumstances. I do think that there's a special obligation on us as we become, as the culture doesn't share the views that we share. There's a special obligation on us to be very thoughtful about the way we do things, because we are representing Christ. We're representing the name of Christ and Christianity. That's right. In the society. So we need to be very careful. And I think if I was called on to apologise, I would just want to clarify with them. And I would apologise if there was offence caused, because offence wasn't meant. There's nothing wrong with that. But I couldn't apologise for the view. You can't do that. But I'm sure in a collegiate situation, you'd like to think that people can still sit down with a colleague and have a heart-to-heart, genuine conversation about how they think and how they feel. And that's what you would have to do, but without saying I'm wrong, or without saying that this is, you can say I'm wrong, but without saying that this is wrong, this truth is wrong, because we've got to be clear about these things. And that's that's quite a private example that you're giving there, and so that's sort of someone's personal witness.
Can I take that a little further? Should that person resolve to not make any such comments in the future?
Well, this is of course the issue, and the answer, of course, is absolutely not. because much of what goes on here is we see, particularly through different equal opportunity commissions and things like that, we see people raising complaints against sort of this school or that organisation or this person. And, you know, the Christian world is on kind of like broadband. We find out about what's going on across the Christian community pretty quickly. And when that person gets in trouble, like let's take Archbishop Porteous, one of the ones that's really out there in the public square, when they get in trouble, everybody moderates themselves and shuts down. But see, that makes it very, very easy, very easy to suppress the debate. If nobody shuts down and everybody keeps speaking, then you're still in the public square and it's had no effect. And not only that, but courage is contagious. And one of the great things we need
Are we asking that guy to be a test case?
Who?
The person who was asked to apologise for a conversation that they unintentionally caused offensive.
Or maybe not. I don't know. I mean, my view is that if the outcome of doing the right thing is a test case, as you put it, then that's the world we live in, unfortunately.
Are there any legal instruments which they could assert, saying my freedom has been impinged by you asking me to apologise for having a political opinion that in a conversation that was started by somebody else?
Yeah, I mean there are. I mean, I probably, if it was me, I wouldn't approach it that way. But let's pretend there was actually a legal dispute that came out of it, despite the best intentions of everybody present. There is a situation I'm aware of in the public service where a legal dispute's arisen because of something a public servant did, and there's really no way around it. It's not like he's gone in the room and said, "Right, I'll sue you." It wasn't like that.
The reason I'm asking is because that's what they would do. That's what the left do. They weaponise it.
We're not called on to be like everybody else. We're called on to be different. And so I would say, don't necessarily adopt their tactics. And when I say there, I'm conscious of caricatures. I know there's a lot of people that would never dream of it, but there are some that do. Yeah. I would say be different and take the line that conscientiously I think is right. But the courage is contagious. When one person does it, many people feel that they are able to do it. And so we need people who will stand even publicly and make these cases and be clear about the truth, because the more rapidly we silence ourselves, the more rapidly we will be silenced. It's a real concern. You asked the question. Sorry, Dave.
I think we need a pregnant pause because
right.
I think there's a lot of import on that statement. If we silence ourselves, the more easily we'll be silenced.
Oh, without doubt, and I've seen this happening, and it's very...
You forgot the pregnant pause.
Yeah. Oh, well, sorry. I just like the sound of my own voice in the pregnant pause, Dave. Give me some credit.
I can relate.
Yeah, no, but it's true.
So what was the question you were going to answer that I've forgotten?
Yeah, you forgot you asked a question. You said, is there some legal principle that they could rely on?
Instrument, yeah.
Let's say that there is a complaint for some reason, and these are the sorts of issues we get involved with. There are legal doctrines that you can rely on. There's, for example, something called the implied freedom of political communication, which is essentially a constitutional law thing in Australia where if a government makes a law that burdens your political communication, or if a government department or an administrative body or something makes a decision against you that burdens your political communication, you can raise this argument and you can say, they can't actually do that because I have to be free to communicate robustly on political matters.
And are there any exclusions? Are you free to communicate your political opinion in a government department, in the military, in a high school, in a classroom?
Yes, all of those things should be fine. There's not exclusions per se. There's a balancing exercise that goes on, and they say, is the law or is the decision necessary? Is the law or is it reasonably adapted to achieving a legitimate policy aim? There's these questions the court asks, and they go through these phases. So there's balancing that goes on. So if somebody, it is still true that if you go out there in flagrant disregard for decency and the other person, and you're rude and whatnot, you could still get in trouble. The implied freedom isn't necessarily going to be an issue. And frankly, people who do that, I wouldn't be that interested unless there was some very strategic legal doctrine at work. I wouldn't be very interested necessarily in defending that kind of conduct, where we really want to help people that need the help and have done things in good faith.
So to summarise, if you're in high school, university, college, TAFE, a work site or an office, private or public sector, it's important to let people know you're a Christian and to just be known as a Christian, even so people can relate your friendliness and your unconditional acceptance of everybody equally with Christianity, but not to go out looking for and picking fights.
I would think I would agree with that. Yes, that's right. I don't think we should pick fights. I mean, if people want to fight with us, that's something else. But I really don't think we should. But I think to be known as a Christian. But I'll say this: some young people in particular, they're not clear on how their Christian faith should influence the way they behave, etc. They might feel very reticent about being too open because they're uncertain, they're nervous, they're young. And for those people, I would say get to know your faith. And I think there's a real problem amongst...
Watch more Church and State.
Watch more Church. Yeah, please watch more Church and State with Dave Pellowe. Do that. And but also, in addition to that, I mean, one of the most important things I did as a teenager, I don't know why, I had good influences in my life, was to get to know my faith, was to know the Bible, what it actually says, know who Jesus is, what he actually was like, and know church history and where we've come from. And, that gives you a basis of conviction. And conviction really is the seedbed from which courage arises, fearlessness arises, also even virtues and love of neighbour and all of those things. It's got to be grounded in solid conviction. So I would encourage both of those things, what you said plus get to know your faith. And
if I'd add something else to that, hearkening back to something I said in a previous segment, and that is be a nicer person. Actually work on being more Christ-like. Because society's not going to tell you that's important. Society's going to tell you society is the problem and you need to work on society. But I think the Word of God tells us work on yourself and get that beauty of Christ that's in you out. That doesn't mean beat yourself up and go on guilt trips, but just be constantly aware we're on a journey and being better. And getting to know your faith will help achieve that at the same time. And just work off those rough edges.
Young people seems on the whole at the moment, it's sort of, I don't know if it's just I easily generationally stereotype, but I think this is true though. I think a lot of young people, they want to change the world. That seems to be the thing that drives a lot of people. They want to get out there and make a difference and change the world. The hard answer I have to that kind of attitude, and I speak to myself as well, is change yourself.
Yeah.
You can't be sure that you'll change the world.
Yeah.
But you do have an obligation to change yourself.
This is not an invitation to be aggressive and reckless in going and picking fights with the world and with leftists and minority lobbyists. This is an invitation to be fearless with the truth and to be unlimited with our love and to understand that if trouble comes looking for you, that there is a really, really good law firm and help available. Don't respond formally at all before you've spoken to either a good lawyer that you already know or the Human Rights Law Alliance. We value differences of opinion. We value disagreement. We're not diminishing the worth or value of any individual at all. But clearly some ideas are better than others, and hopefully the best idea will win if we start talking about them more freely and less insecurely amongst ourselves. Martyn, I really appreciate the time and the wisdom and the knowledge that you've shared with us today. That's the end of this episode. If you're not a partner, become a partner now and you'll be able to head over and see the bonus segment, which will let us know a little bit more about who Martyn Iles is. But to sign up for episode updates or to become a partner, head to our website, churchandstate.com.au, and to sign up to be on the mailing list for the Human Rights Law Alliance and to get more information about them, their website is hrla.org.au. And we'll see you next week.